Hey everybody, Kit Cummings, Power of Peace podcast, powered by the Power of Peace Productions, which supports the Power of Peace Project, which is our 501c3 nonprofit, and our work with underserved youth, interrupting and redirecting kids that are on a perilous course and setting them firmly on the pathway to extraordinary dreams, the Power of Peace. What's up everybody, Kit Cummings, welcome to the Power of Peace podcast. Thanks for stopping by. You know, I want to just jump right in. We're going through some crazy times right now in our world. Of course, it's been that way for a long, long time, but we have more access to information and people are so tuned in, and most of what they're looking at is drama. We're seeing unparalleled stress, anxiety, depression, and addiction, which is a lot of what we talk about here as well. In our first episode, I talked about my own story, my own journey with addiction. Today, I'm going to give you a kind of another side of the story, but there's a lot of storms, I call them storms, that blow through life. And storms don't ask permission, they don't make an appointment, they just show up. And if you think about the journey of your life as a line, there's all kind of ups and downs and twists and curves, and there are turning points. And the storms bring about turning points in your life. You're going one direction, then all of a sudden something shows up that you're not expecting, and it can change your life. As we look back over the course of our life, there's going to be a handful of things that caused a trajectory change or a total direction, a path change. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Babies are born, people pass. Marriages we celebrate, sometimes they end. Sometimes your money's good, sometimes it goes away. Your health, injuries, friends, life happens. And the more times around the sun, the more times we're going to be beaten up in the storms. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong, it's just life on this planet. And it can be complicated sometimes. Today I'm going to talk about blessings and curses. People like to label things. And I've seen that if something makes me feel good, or if it's pleasant, I say, man, that's good. Somebody says, how you doing, man? I say, good. It's like my job's good, kids are good, marriage is good, money's good. It's good, everybody's good. Because I feel good. And then things that make me feel bad, we label bad if it's unpleasant. If you go through a rough little stretch, man, what's up? How's it going? Oh man, tough times. It's been bad lately, bro. It's like, and then there's a list of things that really kind of illustrate whether this is a good time or a bad time. But the older I get, and the more I look back on that lifeline that we're talking about, there are times when I would have said something was good and maybe it wasn't good at all. It just seemed good at the time because it was pleasant. Or I can say, man, that was bad. And I look back on it and that was significant and it was hard and it was painful, but it brought about a change that I was seeking or something that I needed. And it reminds me of a story, and I love this story. It's about an old man and he had a son. He was a widower, had lost his wife. And now he's grown old. He's kind of feeble, but he's got a young son. They've got a small little farm out in the middle of nowhere, and they're poor, but they make it. And the man's got a horse, and it's just not a horse. It's like part of the family. It's a beautiful stallion, and it's really the only thing of value that he has, him and his son. And when times get really tough in that part of the country, all the villages come out and they try to buy his horse because it was worth something. And you know how it goes when times are tight, there's supply and demand. They come out and they try to get him to sell the horse. And the man would always look at him and say, I'll never sell the horse. I don't care how bad it gets. That horse is family to me. And then be like, oh man, you're going to lose everything, old man. You're a fool. And then they go away. A couple weeks go by and there's a big storm that blows through. And the horse breaks out of the stall and runs away. The word gets out to the people of the village and they come out and they're like, man, you are cursed. The only thing of value you had, you've lost. Now you're going to lose everything. What do you have to say for yourself? The old man's like, hey, we don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. We just know that my horse has run away. They're like, whatever. And they're talking about him as they go away. A couple weeks go by, and all of a sudden the horse returns, and it's got 12 more. And a whole pack of horses is coming. The son goes out and waves them all into the corral and the stall. And then just like that, he becomes one of the wealthiest men in town because he's got 13 wild horses. Well, that's a commotion, and all the people of the town come out. And they're like, oh my gosh, it wasn't a curse that your horse ran away. It was a blessing. What do you have to say for yourself? And the old man looks at him, shakes his head and said, We don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. We just know that my horse has returned and brought 12 more. And they're like, whatever, you old fool, man, that was a blessing. Well, now the son has to go out and break the horses because they're wild. And when you break a horse, you got to get on it and tosses you off, get on it, tosses you off. And then finally, the horse has what we call a moment of clarity and realizes it can't win this battle, and the horse is broken. Well, while he's breaking the horses, one of them tosses him up in the air and he comes down and boom, he breaks his leg. And now he's got a broken leg and he can't work the horses or the farm. He's laid up in bed. Word gets out. All the people come back out and go, oh my gosh, it wasn't a blessing, it was a curse. Those 12 horses, they're going to ruin you because now your son, your only son, is laid up in bed hurt. What do you got to say for yourself? The man shakes his head and laughs and says, we don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. We just know that my son has a broken leg. And they're like, whatever, it's a curse. You're cursed, old man. And they walk away talking to themselves. Well, a war breaks out in the neighboring countryside, and all the young men of the village are sent off to fight in battle. Many of them die. And the people of the village come out and they're like, oh my gosh, old man, it was a blessing that your son broke his leg. Our sons are off dying in battle and yours is safe at home in your bed. What do you have to say for yourself? And he looked at them and he said, when will you people ever learn? We don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. We just know that my son is safe here and yours are at war. He said, we read one page and we think we understand the book. We see one line of the song and think we understand the whole meaning. Just one little line in a poem and think we understand the author. He said, we don't know. Blessings sometimes are curses, and curses sometimes are blessings. And I think that a lot of people live life that way. Blessings and curses, what makes me feel good, what makes me feel bad. Well, I'm going to talk about a time in my life where I felt like a curse came upon me. This is about 20 years ago, 02, going into 03. And things were just, they weren't going well. They weren't going well in my marriage. They weren't going well with my work. I mean, it was just physically, I was going through some things. And then all of a sudden, I went into something I'd never experienced before, and it was a deep depression. And I was a preacher at the time, had been doing that for about 15 years. And I had counseled people, I had taught people, I'd, kind of therapy with people. But I couldn't have empathy. I could have compassion, but I didn't know what they were feeling. And a lot of times when somebody's depressed, people, good-meaning, well-meaning people will go to them and say, man, just pick yourself up. Go work out, think more positive, just read your Bible more, pray more, let's go hang out, man. It's not just chill, it's not as bad. And they'll try to explain the situations that aren't as bad as the person who's depressed thinks they are. And they don't realize what clinical depression is like. And for the first time in my life, I was experiencing real depression. And I'm an outgoing guy. I love people. My job is outside. It's not sitting behind a desk. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to leave the house. And I just I was by myself all day. I got very anxious and I felt hopeless. And I'm a positive dude. Anybody knows me. I'm a life of the party. I love life. And all of a sudden it was like a dark lens. I was wearing glasses and I couldn't see the light. And I was imagining worst case scenarios, and my life felt like it was falling apart. And I went to a friend of mine, and a trusted friend, and he's a psychiatrist, and I already trusted him. That was important for me. So I went to a friend that knew what he was talking about, and we started going through all the tests that are gold standard tests. It took, 4 hours. You've got long 350 questions. You got those ink blots. You got cognitive testing, just all this battery of tests. It's one of those things that you can't fool. And I got a diagnosis that hit me out of the blue. I already knew I was an alcoholic. I had not stopped drinking yet. I wouldn't stop drinking until 2005. But I knew it. I mean, alcoholism had taken my dad young when I was in college, and his dad. And so I'm not stupid. I knew I drank alcoholically my whole life, and I knew one day I'd probably have to deal with it. So that was not, the diagnosis. It was the word that is a word you never can forget. When you hear this word, it's forever attached to the person that it's connected to. And it's the word bipolar. And I'm looking at this report, and I'm looking at my trusted friend, and he tells me what it is. He said, we know you're an alcoholic, but also you have bipolar disorder. And it was like, it was just out of the blue. And we're talking about 20 years ago. We've come a long way, but still, that word, even today, think about the labels that we have today. I came out a long time ago and said, hey, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And I understand anonymity. I'm cool with it, man. I protect people's anonymity. I feel like I'm supposed to tell my story. I'm not ashamed of it. So it's been, 6,292 days since I last had a drink. I did the math. About 17 years and change. And so I've been very open with that. But now all of a sudden, I was like, whoa, because I had judged that label too. And when I've heard the word bipolar before, I think of train wrecks, worst case scenarios, celebrities we've lost, tragic endings. It affects about 2% of the population. The dual diagnosis of alcoholism or drug addiction and bipolar mixed together puts people like me in about the 1 percentile, and so it's a very special group. But it's easy to be on the outside of that and to judge it if we haven't walked it. Now, people that have been following my work, I would think they're probably going to be surprised when they see this. And it's funny, I was on a stage in LA about a month ago, 6 weeks ago maybe, and I knew that I was probably going to start talking about this because I'm open with everything in my life. And I can't imagine living my whole life being open about everything except this. Be like, really? Why do you keep that? And I thought about all the people out there that are suffering with this thing, or the families of those that have people who are depressed or high anxiety or bipolar, or a lot of the other things that we're suffering with in this country and really the world with our mental health. And this was a big decision for me. So standing on the stage in LA, I said the following sentence. I said, I'm gratefully addictive and wonderfully bipolar. And there was a laughter in the audience, and it was a nervous laughter. And I said to them with no vibe, but I looked at them and I said, why are you laughing? And this is on a stage in front of a pretty good sized crowd, and they're like, uh-oh, he's serious. And they realized this was a moment. And I said, you guys are the first audience I've ever told that to. And then I made a joke. I said, let's see how that works out for me and keep it on the down low. But it was being streamed, it was being recorded, it was live. So, that was just a joke. But for me, that was a big step kind of coming out about, I'm just going to be open about my journey, not just through addiction and through loss and through, tragedy like we all experience or will, but also just my particular journey. And at first, like I said, that storm blew into my life, and I thought I was cursed. And I started studying it, and I started seeing, famous people that are bipolar, and I started looking at statistics, and I started looking at suicide and different things. And I'll be honest, it was scary. You know what I'm saying? It's heavy, because then you start thinking, oh man, am I going to be one of those? Or is it going to be like this? But I really had to count the costs and talk to my wife, talk to my kids, talk to my best friends and say, listen, this is something I really want to help people. That's what I do. You know what I'm saying? Whether it be kids in schools or people in prisons or in the court system or, churches. I work with a lot of different groups. And I want people to see someone that has a life that I really believe they would say, he's got a good life. He's happy. He loves what he does. He's got a great marriage. He loves his kids and has the respect of them. I've got more friends than I know have time to spend with. My life is full and I live it to the fullest. But then this is my challenge. I don't even know about challenge, it's my reality. And I thought, well, if I talk about it, maybe somebody out there will be encouraged to say, hey, this is not a sentence. This is not a, well, my life's going to suck now because I have this thing. It's like, no, I have a fascinating brain Now, there's an Old Testament scripture that I love. It's like an anchor for me. And it's in the Psalm 139. And basically what it says is that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that our Creator knit us together in the mother's womb and saw every one of my days before one of them came to be. And it says so much more. It's a beautiful psalm. And I look at that, and then I started thinking, man, does God, did he mess up when he made me? I mean, he almost done with me, and then he just kind of messed up. Oops, we made him a bipolar addict. And I started thinking, no, my brain, if you take away the label, I've got a fascinating brain. And nobody's got one just like me. And nobody's got one just like you. And so I went to work trying to explore and study and understand the human brain. And I'm talking about, I just went ham. I started studying everything from quantum mechanics to physics to biology and chemistry and philosophy and world religion, and brain science really got my attention because now I was motivated. I wanted to find out, what is this device, this 3.5 pound, gray matter, this little universe that we have, that our Creator designed. And I'm going to ask you this. Do you think he messed up? You think he wasn't paying attention? Do you think he made a mistake? Or do you think he decided to curse this one? Or am I supposed to discover the brilliance and the beauty of my brain and get past this little word? It's a word, bipolar, but it's supercharged with energy and baggage and sights and memories and it's just like it's a firebrand word. But if we take that word away and just say, man, he's got a fascinating brain, and sometimes it moves fast, and sometimes it kind of crashes too. And then I let you in on the journey. Who knows? Maybe we can help some people. I know the first time in the valley, it was scary. It's like, what's happened to me? I think there's a lot of people out there that, there's an acceptable level of what we would say, is normal. And outside of the bounds is what we'd say clinical. So, when great things happen, we win the game, get the promotion, meet the girl, whatever, win the lottery, of course you're going to be exhilarated, and there's going to be, you're kind of manic in a way where you're spun up and you're just euphoria, right? But if you go outside what's normal into this area up here of mania, of clinical mania, that's what we would consider mental illness, okay? And there's various degrees of that, but we all have a little touch of it, you know what I'm saying? It's just acceptable, it's normal. Those that are built like me, we have, with addiction and this particular mental illness, it's a dopamine issue. And dopamine is the feel-good drug that our Creator gave us. It's natural. And there's certain things that release it, natural ways. Dopamine is a gift. It's what the dope fiend is chasing, not chasing the heroin, chasing that dopamine blast that heroin brings on. And so it's a dopamine issue. I got a little more than most people. That's why I chase things and I love hard and I get hooked on whatever makes me feel good, because what makes one person feel pretty good makes me feel real good. But it's kind of like what goes up must come down. And I realized this as I look back, a lot of my sermons, very entertaining preacher. And there's a lot of times where I'm sure that I was manic. I was just within those bounds. And then I'm also very deep. I feel like I feel like I have a gift of empathy. I feel people's pain, and God's allowed me to experience a lot of things that I can now relate to people. Whether it be a divorced family, been there. Been through a divorce yourself, been there. Addiction, arrest, mental illness, been there. Suicide in the family, been there. Abuse as a young man, been there. Bankruptcy, yeah, that too. There's a lot. I've got this wild, rich story, and it allows me to identify with people. And now all of a sudden, this is kind of like, I'm sure there'll be more as I grow older, that more to come out, be open about. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be real. I want to be authentic. And to do that, I want to open my mind. So that first time, I call it the valley, okay? So when we go into the valley, I just want to throw this out there. Be careful what you tell somebody that's down. I believe what we need to do is sit with them. Jesus said to the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the stranger, the sick, and the prisoner, go and visit with them. Sit with them. Not counsel them, train them, save them, disciple them, visit with them. And those that are sad, it's a lonely place to be. It's an isolating thing, whether it's addiction, mental health, or if you have a combination. It's an isolating disease. And when the phone stops ringing, it's quiet, you know? But then again, when somebody's pressing us, come on, man, just cheer up, think positive thoughts, you know, all the things that people say. Be gentle and pump the brakes when trying to give advice, because sometimes, even if we mean well, we can kind of push someone deeper into a thing where they already feel like they might not get through it. And so that valley was very important to me. Then came the mountaintop. So the whirlwind, you know, the storm blew in 02, 03. Well, now 03 going into 04 was my first mountaintop experience. And so my son and I talk about, man, going to the top of the mountain and going to the valley. And where most people live is kind of in this in-between place. You know what I'm saying? Not too high, not too low. Circumstantial, you know, exhilaration, and circumstantial sadness. That we consider that acceptable. And so the mountaintop was a whole different experience. When you're down in the valley, there's a lack of dopamine, a lack of serotonin. It's a brain chemistry issue. And no matter how hard you try, it's hard to see things clearly and see things as hopeful and light at the end of the tunnel. And that is a brain chemistry issue, because there's not necessarily anything going on that would get you depressed, but you're just feeling that. It's a heaviness. Imagine if the weight of the world is just pulling you down. It's like you've got a coat on that weighs 100 pounds, and it's just like, oh, so heavy. It was like that. But now 20 times around the sun, I've learned, you know, that the valley is a very sacred place. It's where I find my depth. It's where I find my empathy. It's where I find my compassion. It's where I find my softness and gentleness, which isn't natural for me. I'm a, woo, let's go take the world, charge. I'm that kind of guy. And so this is a very, very sacred place for my brain. And I think when God knit me together, he knew what he was doing. And he gave me a deep, deep place. I just have to learn how to manage it. And I've got a wife, that'll be a whole nother, you know, show altogether, that is more than a suitable helper for me. I mean, she is. I pray that you have someone or you find someone that understands you as she does me. She helps me. She helps me notice things when I don't notice. She helps me when I'm overreacting to something that I shouldn't be. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. She's the best thing God ever gave me. So the first trip up the mountain was a trip, because it wasn't like you spun up. It was just you start feeling better and better, and then all of a sudden you start feeling good. And then you're not just confident, you're ridiculously confident. And it's not just you come up with good ideas. It's like everything's a good idea. I mean, you don't have any bad ideas. And there's not a whole lot of time between when you have an idea that you love and you pull the trigger. That's where I could get in trouble. It's when you have that idea and you send the text and go, oh, snap, I probably shouldn't have sent it. I mean, it's impulsive a lot of times. But the higher you rise, I mean, it's like you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. Now I'm talking about unmedicated. Okay, we have modern medicine, and I praise God for it. I never resisted it. I welcomed it because it was a trusted friend, the doctor, who helped me. I didn't resist the medication, and I'm pleading with people to find the right balance for you, if that's something that's necessary, whatever your mental health challenge might be. And so I never really resisted it. I just continued. It's kind of a dance. You find your way. And, you know, well medicated with good relationships and, you know, strong people around you that you trust, you can stay in that middle area and have the life that I think people that watch my life see that I have. But without the tools that I've been given, that mountaintop can just keep climbing. And you can make some poor decisions. In 03, especially 04, I made some terrible decisions that I'd never made before. And just boom, boom, just in the blink of an eye, yeah, let's do that. And I destroyed some things, and my whole world fell apart. And keep in mind, I was a preacher. And so I was right at the end of my preaching career, and I gave up. I mean, right after I was depressed and everything was kind of unraveling, I walked away. But after I walked away from the ministry and I was out there in the free world, I started to rise, and it was the perfect storm. It was a whirlwind, because that's when I wasn't making good decisions, and I didn't have that governor that says, that little voice saying, nah, that's probably not a good idea. And so that was crazy. And it was hard, because now all of a sudden I had wreckage, and I was a public figure. I have been. I mean, I live in Atlanta area my whole life, 58 times around the sun. I know a lot of people know me. And so I was quite a good story. I mean, hanging out in clubs, crashing cars, just out there. And I didn't realize what was going on in my brain. Now, I don't blame or excuse any of the decisions I made. I just looked back and went, so for some out there, this can be like, it doesn't have to be a sentence. It can be oh, that's what's up. You know, it was almost like thank you for helping me understand. And that's when I started trying to understand this thing, you know, and bag labels. I almost wasn't even going to use the label. And I'm like, well, people will know what you're talking about. Just use it. But I don't like labels. I just like saying my fascinating brain. And so, you know, the first time up the mountain, it was crazy. And that's also a place where the person you're trying to advise ain't trying to listen to you, especially if they're in a place where it's early, or they're not properly medicated, or they don't have the tools to manage it. It's hard to deal with somebody that's just, we're moving fast and the ideas come. But here's what's cool. I'm an author, and I'm a teacher, and I'm a coach. I create things for a living. I'm a peacemaker. I bring people together in prisons and schools and churches, and, you know, I love what I do. But I started thinking, man, when God put my brain together perfectly and wonderfully, and he gave me this gift, what I call superpower now, man, I've been in 100 prisons around the world and across the country, literally. Jails, prisons, addiction and recovery centers, over 100 in Honduras and Mexico and Ukraine and South Africa, some of the most dangerous prisons in the world. In this country, you'd know the name of a lot of the prisons I've been in. And I look back and I think about my fascinating brain. And, you know, walking into a cartel-controlled prison in Tijuana, you know, to me is a good day. I get butterflies. I can't wait, because I love living on the edge. And it's helped me to build a story, which my teaching comes from, my books come from, the film that we will make comes from. And it's who I am. You know, it's how he made me. And so I started thinking, man, if you took away my addictive nature, which a lot of people, including me, was like, man, why you make me like this? If you took it away, which a lot of people would wish if they're in recovery or should be, you take away me. I don't even know what would be left, but it wouldn't be the kid, you know. And if you took away my fascinating brain and this thing we call bipolar disorder, you take away me. I mean, someone would be left, and it might be easier or more comfortable, but you'd lose me. And I look at the career that I love and my life's work and all the incredible stories from around the world, just these incredible highs and deep lows. And I don't know, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because you'd be taking away who I am. And so I'm gonna kind of start to wrap with blessings and curses, where we started. Over the years, I'm not gonna lie, I hadn't been like, yoo-hoo, I love this. It's been a challenge, man. I've studied hard. I still do. You know, I've worked things out. I've written books, because a lot of it was therapeutic and cathartic. And that comes from my nature, but it can be maddening. It can also be frustrating for a spouse, a parent, a child, but when the other person, you know, is hard to deal with. And so it hasn't been easy, but it's made me who I am. And I've gotten to a place in my career where I'm like, hey, either people can handle it or not, but it's time. It's time to start talking. Somebody got to stand up. And I know there's more of us out there. Some celebrities are starting to come out and say, hey, yeah, me too. And I think it's time, because people, addiction and mental illness are kind of like dirty little secrets, you know, that we don't talk about in church, and we don't talk about to our friends, because heaven forbid the word got out that, man, he got a drinking problem. Oh, she's got mental illness. It's like you're going to be an outcast. And if so, well, then shame on people that do that. But I'm finding that people maybe are more open to it. But also, I'm not telling you to do this. I'm not saying, so go ahead and start telling the world. Don't do that. Please don't do that. I feel like I'm called to do that. Maybe not you. Probably the vast majority, no, get help. Find the right doctor, find the right friends, find the right therapist. It's going to be a long journey. It's going to be hard. Just go ahead and it is what it is. It's going to be hard. And people that don't have the tools or resist medication or continue to drink, those that drink and use drugs while they're trying to medicate this very serious mental illness. I've always got to remember it's serious. It's a train wreck, so a lot of this is please, learn about this thing. But also, if you've got a loved one, or if you just have a friend, or if you just don't know what you're talking about, be careful what you say to the person or what you say about this, because, we're all people with souls and brains, man, and we're all trying to make it through. And ain't any of it easy. But I'd rather have the roller coaster I have than some dull, boring life, man, where I get up to go to a job every day, put in the same work, same time, same people, same conversation, same 50,000 thoughts. Shoot, I'd rather live an adventure, man, take the hill and slay the dragon and take the castle and win the maiden, the hero's journey. That's what I want, and that's what God's given me. And so I'll kind of close out with this idea. There's also a New Testament passage, comes out of 2 Corinthians 12, where the Apostle Paul, he's dealing with something that we don't know what it was. And he called it a thorn. He said, to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh. And then he said, a messenger of the evil one. So he's like, man, this was satanic. That's how much he hated it. And he says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord, take it away. Well, I tell you what, it's more than 3. People pray every day, please take it away. Or you can come and make peace with your thorn, which is what Paul did. Paul said, 3 times I pleaded, and that God told him, my grace is sufficient for you, Paul. And here it is. For my power is made perfect in weakness. And therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly about my insults, my persecutions, my difficulties, my struggles. For when I am weak, he is strong. Paul had an epiphany. He's like, oh man, my thorn is valuable. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I started realizing God does not make junk, and he put me together the way he wanted me. He has a destiny for my life. I need the brain I have. I've got to learn how to manage it. And this thing that I call a curse or a thorn, Paul struggled with it too, whatever his was. But then he realized, what this does is it keeps me weak. And when I'm weak, his power is evident in me. And that is what I've experienced. And then God gives you little kisses along the way. And I've been, going through that the last few years because, we've got kids. And, from my first marriage, we have 2 from the first and 2 from the second with my beautiful wife. But the first 2 are in their 20s, a boy and a girl. And they're experiencing some of the things that I've been talking about. And so as I walk through this alongside my 27-year-old son, who's having to deal with his challenges and of this thing, his father is 20 years ahead of him. And when he starts to go into the valley, I know what the valley looks like, and I can be waiting for him down there. And as he's trying to get out of the valley, I know the trails and the pathways that lead out. And when he goes to the mountaintop and wants to keep going, man, I know how to get to the mountaintop, and I can help hold him down. I wouldn't be able to help my son if I hadn't gone through it myself, so I wouldn't trade it for the world. And my daughter, who's 24, she's unashamedly in recovery. She's 2.5 years sober at 24. I mean, I'm so proud of her. I admire her so much. She's a soldier, a little recovery soldier. And she's mastering her mind. At that age, shoot, it was 40 when my world fell apart. And so to be able to walk through it, I go to recovery meetings with my daughter, and my daughter is leading a meeting, and I'm sitting out there with everybody else. You think I think this is a curse? Shoot, it's the greatest blessing of my life because I get to walk with her. I'm 20 years ahead of her in this recovery journey. I was going to say battle, but it's a journey. So to tie it all together, I wouldn't trade my brain for anything. I love it. It's like a fine-tuned sports car. It'll go fast, but you got to keep that joker in the shop. And so it's a forever process, but I don't regret it. I don't hate it. I don't resist it. I don't judge it. It's me. It's not like a part of me or something that's on me. No, it's me. It's the wonderfully flawed me. Gratefully addicted and wonderfully bipolar. I pray this helps somebody. I pray that it will maybe challenge some of the things you think and maybe even kind of get you to pause before you say some things or judge a thing that you haven't walked through yourself. But hug a loved one. Go visit with somebody who's depressed or lonely. Go and ride with somebody who's speeding up a little too fast and might be in a dangerous place. Visit with them. That's what we need in this world. Love you and can't wait to see you again. Kit Cummings, Power of Peace Podcast. Come join us again. Peace.